Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Bit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and it is another Retro Rewatch episode. And this week, I'm going animated because I am talking about a movie that I watched nonstop, and I literally mean nonstop, as a kid. And I'm pretty sure I wore out the VHS for this movie. I am talking about Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. Listening to these rewatches, I usually give a little history and backstory on this movie, or on the movies that I'm watching. But this one's a little bit more complicated because there are different versions of this movie. There was the original Japanese version that was released in 1994, a home video version, which was released in 1995, which is the one that I watched a lot growing up. And then in 2006, on DVD, they released a, quote, uncut, uncensored, unleashed version, which restored a lot of the stuff from the Japanese version that they took out from the home video version that was released here in the States. A lot more violence in that cut. We get a naked Chun-Li, which we'll get to, sort of, not really. I'm not going to talk about a naked animated character, but there was a quick scene of a naked Chun-Li, which is taking a shower before she fights Vega in the movie. We'll get to that. But yeah, there's different versions of this movie, and because of the different versions, there's also different soundtracks to everything. But we're going to be talking about the version that I watched. But, we're not going to get too into that because that just, that would be very technical, and I'm not going to get into that. The movie also led to the basis of future video games. I won't talk about that here because, we're a movie podcast. We're not a video game podcast. But it led to kind of like, the Alpha series. I think the Alpha series is what this movie is kind of more based on. Also, because of the voice actor rules that were going on, the English dub actors are named differently, especially and most famously Bryan Cranston. He voices Fei Long in the movie for one scene where his character Fei Long faces Ryu. That is Bryan Cranston in the English dub, but he is labeled or he is credited as something else because, again, of voice rules. Some of the voice actors were not, named properly. I don't know what the voice rule was, but there was voice actor rules at the time, and they had to change everybody's name, which is very weird. Also, the dubbed version in one scene, I can't remember if they fixed this later, but in the dubbed version, if you look at the screen that Chun-Li in kind of her introduction scene, the characters are labeled as their Japanese characters. I remember this in the home video version. They're labeled as their Japanese names. So Bison is not in America. Bison is, of course, the leader, and he's the guy in red. In case you don't know, Street Fighter, he is the main bad guy. But in Japan, he's not named Bison. I think I can't remember if he's Vega or Balrog. I forget. But he's not named Bison. So their names are kind of switched around, and you can see it in the video screen if you pay attention. So there you go. Whatever. So that's the movie, or that's the little tidbits that I have for the movie. That's all I really found about the movie. A lot of the other stuff is like, how it kind of changed the video game aspects and how it started the series of video games, how at the end credits of this movie, because it was a home release, this movie came out before the this movie came out after the release of Street Fighter here in America. So in the international home video releases, they would show you a trailer for the movie to be like, hey, you saw the animated movie, great. Now go see the live action Street Fighter, the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Go watch that movie when it comes to your area in theaters. Very cool, very interesting. Especially considering, the markets that came out afterwards. Anyway, whatever. So let's talk about Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. I remember Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. I won't say the whole name every time. But I remember watching it as a kid thinking this movie was awesome. It just was great. I love Street Fighter. Still do. I played every game I can get my hands on. And that includes, the Marvel vs. Capcom, SNK vs. Capcom games as well. So I knew these characters. I knew the world. And at this point, I had already seen the Jean-Claude Van Damme version, the live action movie that everybody knows. But seeing these characters in animated form was something kind of else entirely, right? Because we had already seen them in animated form. So that kind of, that connection was more there than it was with the live action. There are scenes so buried in my head that when I saw them again, when I was rewatching this, because I haven't watched this movie in years, like years and years. I don't remember the last time I saw this movie. I remember the last time I saw this movie was on VHS, which that was it's a long time ago. So I have not seen this movie in years, but there was just these scenes so buried in my head, so ingrained in my mind, that when I watched this movie again, I felt like a kid again. I felt like, it was younger me sitting in front of the TV watching this movie. So needless to say, I still very much like this movie upon this rewatch. There are things that as a kid, I kind of just glossed over, obviously, because I was just watching Street Fighter characters, especially, with animated movies. And now that I'm older and watching more movies, especially animated movies, there are things I was like, okay, I can see where you're stretching the runtime here a little bit, where you're, reusing cells over again, because there are clearly, that clearly is something they did. And, the movie's not that long. It's like, I don't even think it's over an hour and a half long. So it's pretty, you can breeze right past through it. Also the version that I saw, which is the version on Prime Video, if you want to go watch it yourself, was the mashup of the uncut and English dub version. So there's a lot of different versions of this movie, like I mentioned. The original English dub home release that I watched, of course, which is the VHS one, there wasn't as much, like blood and apparently swearing. Although when I was watching the movie, I didn't really think there was a lot of swearing. Like, they're not dropping F-bombs or anything like that. I think there was one F-bomb drop in the movie that I remember. And I was thinking, even when it happened, I was like, I don't remember that. So it's that version, and the uncut version, like I mentioned, has, the swearing, but it also has, which is something that I didn't know until they did a re-release of this movie, years and years ago as well, when it first, when DVDs and Blu-rays were starting to really be the thing. There was a scene of a naked Chun-Li, and it's there, and we'll get to it when we talk about, or when I get to that part of the movie, but it's there for all you weirdos, and I say that with love. So anyway, let's talk about the movie. So the movie opens with Ryu, Sagat. I'm going to be talking a lot about these characters like you already know them. So if you don't know them, that's fine, because the movie doesn't do, an overly great job of saying who these characters are, but or who they are, like in terms of like their history of the games or anything like that. It just kind of already assumes you know who they are. It gives you a little bit of explanation in the movie, just enough to be like, okay, when you're watching it, you understand what's going on. But when I'm talking about it, I'm assuming, you either watch the movie or you know these characters. If you don't know these characters, it's fine. The movie itself is enjoyable whether you know anything about Street Fighter or not. I probably should have said that at the beginning as well. But anyway, the movie opens with Ryu, Sagat fighting each other, and they're in a field, and it's darkly lit, and the only time you really see them, with just like everything about them, their full profile, is when there's lightning going off, which is a great stylistic choice, whether it's animated or not. Although pulling it off probably in animated form is a little better, I assume. But you can see them, that they're equal in strength and power. And of course, Ryu, being the hero of the movie, gets the upper hand, and we get the title card. The thing about this movie that I forgot about, and watching it now, is that there are multiple storylines going on in this movie. Ryu, obviously being one of the main ones, is traveling across Asia and India, just moving around, training, trying to get stronger, gets suckered into a fight with Fei Long, who is a character in obviously the video games. He's a movie star that does, that wants to be taken more seriously because he actually knows how to fight, and he's a movie star using his martial arts abilities, which is kind of obviously very funny. But they get stuck into a fight. Again, get pretty matched up. Ryu wins. Fei Long earns his respect, and after that, Ryu goes and meets E Honda, or Honda as he's just known in the movie, E Honda for all as he's called in the video games. And Honda is fighting Dhalsim, which is another obviously big character. He's the one that stretches out, shoots fire, if you're familiar with that. And Dhalsim has this, sense that, he senses Ryu, because the whole thing with Ryu is that he is this big, strong, powerful fighter that gives off this aurora, as the term being used around a lot, especially on wrestling Twitter. But after Dhalsim and Honda have their fight, which Honda ends up winning because Dhalsim's distracted, they get together, Honda and Ryu. Honda goes over and he's like, Honda's kind of like the comic relief of the movie, really, if you want to think about it that way. Because all the humor really comes from him. And he's not even in the movie that much. So he goes over to Ryu and he's like, hey, you helped me win this fight. Half this purse is yours. We should stick together because, we're brothers, because, they're both Asian characters. And that's kind of like the bit. Anyway, immediately after that, there's another scene which kind of ties the movie all together, at least for Ryu's sake, of him kind of first experiencing this. There's this little girl that he ran into before, gave her money because, he accidentally made her, drop milk or something. And he gives her money. He's like, hey, sorry about that. Go, get it. And so she finds him in this town, which I guess is a small town. And she's running toward him. He has the money. And then she gets run down, not by a car, by a person. Because in the same square where Dhalsim and Honda are fighting, there's like the speech going on. So it's like the fight is going on one side and a speech is going on in another. And we have our infamous villain group, Shadow Lu or Shadow Law, depending on which version I guess you're listening to. I'll just call them Shadow Law for this case, or Shadow Lu, whichever one comes out. But they are there and they assassinate the speaker going on the speech, and the hitman gets double crossed. Obviously, this is after he hits the little girl, or just runs right past her, knocking her down. And Ryu sees it. Assassin gets killed, but Ryu takes out the guys in the car. And then Honda's like, oh yeah, those guys are Shadow Law guys. Those guys are Shadow Lu guys. You just stepped in something that maybe you shouldn't. Although Honda doesn't seem that worried about it. Honda's very like a carefree kind of guy in the movie. But Shadow Law, again, depending on which version you want to go with, they get talked about in this movie by everybody else like 4 or 5 different times. We are explained. We are explained. That's not how you say. We are told what Shadow Law is 4 different times in this movie by different groups of people. One group of people who should know who Shadow Law is. Actually, 2 groups of people that should know who Shadow Law is, and we are still being explained who they are. Like literally before the 3rd act of a movie, we're still talking about the people are still finding out what Shadow Law is. So yeah, that's the part I was like, oh, you don't need to do that. Come on. All right. Anyway, and this is the second time, by the way, Ryu has told what Shadow Law is, well, because Fei Long told him what Shadow Law was. Honda has told him what Shadow Law was in the span of like a half hour of the movie, if that. So yeah, and unbeknownst to Ryu, he is being tracked down by Shadow Lu after his fight with Sagat, because they were kind of checking out what he was doing. They basically gave him like the over 9,000 scan, because Shadow Law has robots. They have built these androids that are the purpose of them is to track down street fighters. So that is what they are labeled in the movie by one of some like government person, or Chun-Li actually I think says it. I forgot who says it, but I remember when they said it. One of the people that being explained to, like, street fighters, like what, like, yeah, that's what they're called apparently in this movie as well. So he's being tracked. They're being tracked. The whole point, Shadow Law is trying to look for strong people, because the overall story for Shadow Law in this movie is that they are trying to find street fighters to bring in, brainwash, so they can go and do their bidding. Whether it's assassination, whether it's, kidnapping, whatever it is. Because the movie opens up with Cammy, who was a fan favorite of the games. And she takes out, I don't know if he's a senator or a congressman or something. But she goes in and takes him out. And then we have this guy who's just a random person. He's not someone from the games, at least from what I can, at least from what I always remember, he's not someone from the games. He's just some random person. But when Bison's looking back at the footage of Sagat and Ryu, Bison being the main villain, now gets him in a second. they see Ryu as, a potential canon, like the canon, not potential canon. He is the canon. He is the person that they definitely want. He is the person that these androids were always meant to find. So that is, what's going on with them. So now the Ryu is with Honda. Ryu goes up into the mountains and he's like meditating. I think it's like 2 scenes of him meditating, and it's the same cells over and over again. Which again, there's, kind of when you start realizing that they're kind of stretching out the movie a little bit because they're using the same cells. But this leads us into our storyline with Ken. Now, Ken, for those who are slightly familiar, Ryu is the one with the white gi. Ken is the one with the red gi and the yellow hair. So Ken, our first kind of introduction to him is that he is like driving. He is very different from Ryu. Ryu is like this loner, isolated, nomad kind of type. Ken is a very flashy, drives a fancy car, has this beautiful girlfriend that he goes to meet after he's just won this tournament. So he's very different from Ryu, but the same as in he is disciplined and he knows how to handle himself and he knows how to fight because the two train together. And we get flashbacks of them training together. They're basically kind of brothers, really, when you think about it. So Ken has this very nagging feeling that he's been winning this tournaments pretty easily. He's just going around and he wants to fight Ryu again because he knows that Ryu will give him a fight, a proper fight, a fight that is worthy of his time. And unbeknownst to Ken, because they couldn't find Ryu, Shadow Law kind of moves away from Ryu and finds someone else because Ken is being fought by T-Hawk, which is another character from the games. And an android is picking up on them fighting, and it kind of sends back the information to Shadow Law. And Ken is this guy who is like, there's a scientist character. I think he's from the games. He's not a fighting character, but I think he is a character from the games. Like they just mention him, but he's explaining to Bison, our villain, and again I'll get to him in a second, that Ken is basically Ryu, just different. He has the same fighting style. He has the same, he just has the same almost power level, just not there, but just like right there, right under Ryu. And because Ryu is not really on the map because, moving around so much, Bison and Shadow Law are like, you know what? Go get him. If we can't get Ryu, we'll get Ken. And maybe we can get Ryu through Ken in some way, shape, or form. And Ken's driving around at this point, and he gets captured. He gets captured by Bison himself because Bison has sent out his, his goons, and like they can't do anything right. He's like, all right, I'm gonna do this myself. I haven't gotten my hands dirty in a while. I'm gonna go do it myself. And we get our introduction to Bison fighting. Not fair. He obviously has like psycho powers, as they call him in the movie, and he easily beats Ken. Takes him in and begins to brainwash him in a scene that we see, which Ken is naked in the scene when they're brainwashing him. I never noticed that, but he's naked. Why is he naked? Who knows? But he is. And he gets brainwashed, and we'll see the results of that later on in the movie. So let's finally talk about Bison and Shadow Law. Bison is the big guy. He wears all red. He's a general played by Raul Julia in the live action movie, if you remember that. So our villains, like I mentioned, kidnapping street fighters, Chun-Li's introduction in the movie, which after the camera scene, that's kind of where we get introduced to her. So Bison, Shadow Law, are villains. Like I mentioned, finding out that they're kidnapping street fighters off the street to brainwash them and to help them, basically take over. And we also get this scene that I suppose is supposed to show you, I don't know why that was weird to say, how far Shadow Law's reach really is, because we get a scene with a bunch of people, I'm assuming of influence, rich people, maybe even some senators and congressmen, who knows, at this kind of like gala-like area, and they're brought into a theater to watch a fight. They're brought in to watch Zangief. Zangief, obviously very popular in media. If you saw Wreck-It Ralph, he's one of the characters in the villain group. I think Bison's also in that group as well. So he's the big, Russian guy with like, chest, the massive chest hair, and Blanca. And Blanca is the green kind of monster. He's not really a monster. He's actually kind of, the reason why he's like that is because he got transformed into it by an experiment. Anyway, Blanca also in the live action movie, kind of a variation of two different characters in that game, but you get the gist of they got the gist of what he was. It was this green guy mutated. Anyway, so they're having a fight, which is a good fight in the movie. Very stylistically different because they have this like red lighting overtone over it. It doesn't really affect the movie at all because we don't see Zangief or Blanca at all after this fight, which is weird because these are two beloved characters, but for whatever reason the movie just throws them in, I guess because they just need another fight maybe. But there's this weird moment where Zangief looks like he just beat Blanca, which he doesn't. And he shoots a glance over at Balrog, which is the big boxer character, also in the live action movie. And they have this moment where they kind of just stare at each other and they're just like puffing their chest out. And Balrog, for whatever reason, puffs his chest out too and just rips his shirt. Like just clean, like buttons start flying everywhere. He just rips through his shirt, but nothing ever comes of it. Like nothing ever comes of it. They don't even mention it again. I don't know if this scene was always supposed to be in the movie or they'd put it in afterwards. But nothing happens. And then Blanca comes in and does his thing where he shocks Zangief because that's his power. He shocks people. And that's it. We never see him again. No acknowledgement of that scene. No acknowledgement of those characters ever again. But again, cool scene, but maybe there was supposed to be something in there, maybe a longer version of the script that they didn't get to, animate or do or whatever. So I'll bounce back to Chun-Li and Guile, which are our two other characters. Obviously, Chun-Li played by Ming-Na Wen in the live action version, and obviously Guile played by Van Damme. Their stuff here is where a lot of it overlaps too. And again, this is where, we get the explanation of what Shadow is multiple times with them. So Chun-Li is working with like Interpol or something. I think she's an Interpol agent. And again, she's running down everything of who they are. And I mentioned, the different Japanese names for the villains. We get that scene here. Chun-Li is shown to be very super serious. And then the second she meets Guile, and Guile kind of gives her, a little sass, like, I don't want to work with you, whatever kind of thing. She immediately drops that seriousness and like calls him like a brush pad or something because of his hair. Obviously his hair is very, like it looks like a brush pad. So she gets a little looser around Guile most of the time, which, I guess is somewhat connected to the games a little bit as well. She's super serious with everybody else. But then her friends, she's obviously a little more loose. Later, when he meets up with her again, Guile's kind of driving and Chun-Li gets in the way. They don't even have a fight. They kind of just have like a little thing where Chun-Li shows that she is very capable of taking care of herself. And Guile is like, okay, you earn my respect. And also because we share the same trauma, because we find out, or Chun-Li tells Guile, and we find out, the audience, that the reason why Chun-Li is after Shadow Law is because they killed her father. And we get very little glimpse of that later in the movie. And Guile's like, yeah, well, they also killed one of my friends, which any video game fan knows that person is Charlie Nash. They don't say his name, but that's who he's talking about. So they decide to work together, and they're like, okay. Guile's like, I know someone who may know something about Shadow Law, kind of what they're doing, or maybe where they are. So they fly somewhere, and they meet DJ. DJ's another character. DJ was in the movie, in the live action movie. I forgot the actor who played him, but he's working with Shadow Law. He kind of plays Bison's assistant, I guess, if that's what you want to call him. Very different character from the games, because in the games he is closer to what this version is, which he is a guy that's very capable of fighting everybody. And we see DJ, he gets introduced, he's kind of playing like a bouncer or something, and he's taking these guys out, and Guile and them come in and they're talking. And this is a scene where it's like, if it was a live action movie, I'd be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But there's an android in the bar, wherever they are, that gets really, really close to Guile, DJ, and Chun-Li. So Guile and DJ are kind of talking off to the side, and Chun-Li is like, hey guys, look at this. And she literally jumps and kicks the android's head off, which, if she had to know it was an android. By the way, they don't know there's androids looking out for Shadow Lu. There's at no point it's mentioned that these characters know there's androids looking for Shadow Lu. But here, it's like Chun-Li just kicks a guy's head off. Like, we know she has thick thighs. Like, that's the thing about Chun-Li's character, is that she has these very thick thighs. And, she just kicked this guy's head. Like, what if that was a normal guy? That guy would have had a concussion or dead because she kicked that thing's head clear off. And that's when they find out that Shadow Law has like androids that are looking for people. That's kind of how they confirm it for themselves. They kind of figure that out. And that's kind of where you had to like take the leap and just be like, okay, that's fine. But of course, there's another android looking at them. So now Shadow Law knows that Guile and Chun-Li are after them. And that's when Bison is like, you know what, Vega, you go take care of it. And I'll get to that in a second, because the Vega and Chun-Li scene, literally and arguably the best scene in the entire movie. But before we get to that, I want to talk about a little bit about this, because like I mentioned, with the Ryu in the mountains meditation scene, where it looks like they are clearly using the same cell over and over again. When we get introduced to Shadow Law, it's Bison, Balrog, and Vega all walking down a hallway, and it is literally them together. And it's the same scene that they're just using over and over again. It's like they're trying to pretend like it's this long hallway. It is literally the same cell over and over again. But, whatever. And the animation, by the way, for the whole movie, really, the animation is awesome. It is great. It really is. It is very awesome. Which, looking back at, old animation stuff especially from the 90s, coming out of, Japan, obviously, all of it's really great. All of it's awesome. And that they continue the trend here. It's not something that's like overlooked. It's not something that was, bastardized or whatever. Like, no, the animation in this thing is amazing. And I'd say that before we get to this fight scene, because this fight scene is awesome. So the scene starts off kind of like this Psycho kind of, I don't know why Psycho came to mind, but we're looking at these apartment buildings from the outside, and they're kind of like zooming in, and intercut between those scenes when this camera is getting closer is Chun-Li's apartment. And we get closer and closer, and it's Chun-Li in the shower. We can notice that it's Chun-Li in the shower. Nothing too bad until we get a butt shot. And it's like, all right, it's a butt shot, whatever, fine. And then we see her breasts. And again, naked Chun-Li. And like I mentioned, I saw the home video version of this movie, which was the censored version back in the day, because it was the VHS version. So I didn't know about this. And then as I got older and I started, kind of going back, and again, they released like the uncut version, like in the early 2000s or something like that, or like mid 2000s. I, was doing reading, I was doing reading of like what scenes were different. And the scene that was different was the inclusion of naked Chun-Li in the shower. And I'm like, what? Like, that? No way. Like, no. Like, that can't possibly be true. And it was. And we see it here. And I will admit, if I was younger, the age that I saw this, when I first saw this, and I was, again, very young, would have been all over that, right? Horny, little boy, who knows? I would eat that up. Me, older me, now, 34, far from a prude, mind you. We didn't need it. we didn't need that scene. We didn't need to see a naked Chun-Li in the shower. Didn't need to see it. That's just me. But, it's there, whatever. I'm not trying to win points, but we don't need it. But that's what was going on in 90s animation back then. Anyway, Chun-Li, somewhat dressed. She has a shirt on, bra, no pants. She's wearing panties. At the very least, she's wearing panties. She wraps her hair in the trademark buns, and she notices a lampshade moving. And she looks up, and down comes Vega. And Vega is the masked character. He has a mask. He has a snake tattoo all over his body, so he doesn't wear a shirt. He's kind of dressed like a matador. He has like matador pants, pretty much. And he has these claws on his hand. 3 claws, like Wolverine, not Freddy Krueger. 3 claws. And he's a sociopath, honestly. He's a cold-blooded killer. And they have, again, arguably the best scene in this movie, where it's just them beating the crap out of each other. During the fight, Guile is rushing over to Chun-Li's house because he's tried calling her, and then she hasn't picked up because obviously she's fighting Vega. And at one point, Chun-Li knocks the phone over, and she hears them fighting, and he, again, rushes over. But Chun-Li, again, this scene is showing, just how good Chun-Li is, just how far Shadow Law will go. Chun-Li beats Vega, gets the upper hand on him, and literally does her moves. She does the airplane kick, and then she does her lightning kicks, where she, kicking the guy, she's kicking Vega up against the wall, and then she literally drops kick him. She drops kick him through a brick wall, And she lives high up, so he falls into like this dark abyss. So we don't know if he's dead. He probably is dead, but then we never see Vega again. And Chun-Li's obviously worn out. She's been cut up. She's bruised, and Guile comes in, sees Chun-Li, and takes her over to the hospital. So Guile leaves her there, and some kind of one of the military guys is like, hey, we got to hit on Ken, because they've been looking for Ken, because they at some point they realize that they're kind of looking for fighters, or they find like his car or something along the way, and they're like, yeah, it belongs to Ken Masters, and he's like his prime fighter, and I think they put it together. It's like, oh yeah, like obviously he's going after them. So Guile somehow finds Ryu. I forget how they find Ryu, but they find him up in the mountains, and Guile comes down talking to Ryu and Honda, because he's living with Honda at this point. Honda still cracking jokes, and Guile was like, hey, Shadow Law's after you, and Ryu was like, what? Shadow Law? And this entire movie, they knew who Ryu is. Ryu doesn't find out until this very moment. It's literally the final act of the movie. There's like 20 minutes left of this movie, and Ryu just finds out who Shadow Law is, and that the fact that they're actually after him. And it's like, what did I do with them? I don't know. And then that's when we get Bison coming down on his ship. Again, Honda still making jokes. And Bison comes down, Balrog comes down, and Ken comes down. Ken wrapped up in his, red gi, but his eyes. The way they show brainwashing in this movie is the eyes. He has like purple eyes, and like, purple bags under his eyes as well, to show that he is now under Shadow Law's control. And Bison sees Guile. He sees Ryu, he sees Honda. He doesn't really care about Honda, but he sees Ryu, or he sees Guile rather, and he starts just trash talking him, like immediately off the bat. He's like, whatever. Like, Bison in this movie is like throwing puns, or not puns to say, but he is very kind of jokey, somewhat like evilly jokey, and he's like a trash talker. Like, he's trying to get into your head. Like, that's who he is. Like, if, again, connecting it to like my side, if he was a wrestler, he would be like the ultimate heel, because he's just shit talking you, because he knows he can also beat your ass. yeah, like, look, what are you gonna do? You gonna beat me? No, you can't beat me, because I have psychic powers and I'm obviously stronger than you. That's the kind of character that Bison is. So this is where all kind of hell breaks loose, right? Guile goes after Bison. Honda goes after Bison as well. Or actually, I think Honda goes in first, because like, I can't stand this guy talking, and he goes after him, and he disappears, because that's what Bison does in the game. He has this power that he can disappear and reappear behind you. So that's what he does, and he runs into Balrog, and him and Balrog just like go at it a little bit, and they kind of roll off the cliff into an abyss, but they're not dead. They show up again later, but it's like, this movie shows like multiple abysses, just to show you how like deep something is. But they never really show you like just how far it is, but Honda and Balrog are okay. So then we get, Bison going after Guile, and then Ryu trying to talk to Ken, like, hey, like, snap out of it. What's going on? And they start fighting. And Ken is basically beating Ryu up, because Ryu doesn't want to fight him back. And then we intercut back to Bison and Guile, and they have like a very short fight. And Guile's obviously very emotional, and he does his sonic boom, which in the game, you pretty much spam. It's like a Hadouken. You pretty much spam it to, hit your opponent far away. In the movie, the sonic boom, because Guile obviously hits it or does it, and Bison does his disappearing act again. But the sonic boom destroys Honda's house. Like this, like it is like, it's basically like two like energy waves coming at you. Like kind of like not saw blades, but like just like, a blade coming at you basically. And in the movie, I think if that actually hit Bison, he'd be dead, because there's no way that he'd be able to live. Like, this game shows like energy attacks that could seriously hurt you. And in the game, it's like, we're just spamming them, whatever. It's like, but no, in the movie, it's like, that sonic boom landed, we'd have two Bisons, because he'd be split in half. But Bison beats Guile up finally, and he's like, "You can't do anything." And he beats Guile, and Guile's like leaning up against a tree, and Bison goes over to him. He's like, "You're not worth it." And he starts walking away. And Guile basically does that "I didn't hear no bell" kind of line. But Bison just keeps walking away. So we cut back again to the Ryu Ken fight. Like I mentioned, Ken's still beating up Ryu because Ryu doesn't want to hit him back. But eventually he starts like, okay, I gotta, start fighting back because he's whipping my ass. But he gets the best of him. And at some point in the fight, like something happened. I forget like what it was that triggered Ken, but something during the fight triggers him, and he starts losing it. He starts losing the brainwashing, and Bison notices it, and he's like, "God, you're such a disappointment." And he basically, I don't know what he does to him, but he basically kind of just flings him away. Because like I mentioned, he's very demeaning. He's very, talking down to people. He's a very demeaning person. So he, shoots him away, and he starts to fight Ryu a little bit. And Ryu, doing his best to kind of fight back, but he's not really winning. And then we get a shot of Ken, who breaks out of the brainwashing. For whatever reason, he can't use his legs for a little bit. Like he's having trouble walking. So like he balances himself and finds his focus, finds his chi, if you will. And he, recovers. And he goes back and to the fight with Bison, helps out Ryu, and it's Ryu and Ken fighting Bison. Bison's still getting the best of it a little bit, but obviously our heroes, get the best of him a little bit, and it's a very cool scene. Love the scene as a kid, still love it today. It is Ryu and Ken coming together, and they shoot their Hadoukens at him. And it combines them, and it basically turns into this big Hadouken, and it hits it hits Bison, and Bison flies away into the pit. Again, presumably that, he is dead, destroying his ship too in the process, because it goes through, it shoots him and it sends him into the ship, and the ship blows up, and that's why we assume that he's dead. And that's it. That's the end of Bison. That's supposedly the end of Bison and the end of Shallow. And the end of the movie is Guile getting a call from the hospital, because it's sometime afterwards, obviously, to come quick, because they think it's assumed that something happens to Chun-Li and that he's dead, or that she's dead. And Guile walks in, and there's like a sheet over Chun-Li's body, and Guile's like, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you, but we beat him. We got Bison. We got him. I got him for you. We did it. And Chun-Li shoots up, and she's like, yeah, I know, because she shows him paper and everything, and it's like, they did a good job. And it's like, this very like playful scene a little bit, where it's like she's like, he picks her up and puts her back on the bed and starts like tickling her almost. I don't know. It's a weird scene because there's like no sexual chemistry between them at all before that, and now it's like it's there. So anyway, so we do a little of that, and then we get one final scene between Ryu and Ken is basically dropping off Ryu, and it's like, you still owe me a match. The two of them, he still wants his match, even like a match where he's not brainwashed, obviously. He's like, and Ryu's like, I know, we'll do it next time. And Ken drives off in the opposite direction. Ryu walks in the other direction, and that's kind of the end of the movie, right? Some credits start rolling, but no, because then we see a semi-truck coming toward Ryu, and the camera kind of gets closer and closer to the semi-truck, and it shows Bison driving. And Ryu sees it. Ryu jumps up, looks like he's about to kick, the window out. And that's when we get, the credits. And that's the movie. We don't know if that scene's real. We don't know if it's, we don't know what the conclusion of that scene is. It's another little action bit to, leave the fans happy, I guess. So, that's the movie, like I mentioned. Post-rewatch thoughts. Like I mentioned, I still very much like this movie. Even though with some little minor flaws here and there, like animation wise, like again, like the cells being repeated. There's also a scene where like Ryu's walking out of an alley, and like he has no face. It's like it's just him. Like it's a far away shot, I guess, to show like the street and everything. But like he has no face. it's a silhouette, no body mass. It's just him. No, it's the white gi. That's how you know it's Ryu, but no face. Anyway, whatever. Same little thing. The hallway scene, like I mentioned, with Bison, Sagat, and Vega walking down, that happens. Moments I think were really cool. The fight between Chun-Li and Vega, like I mentioned, arguably the best scene in the movie. The fight between Blanca and Zangief is pretty cool, although it's pretty short. I think I just like the way it's lit, like that reddish hue they have in the scene. I want to talk about the Hadoukens, because the Hadoukens are really cool because it's used only twice. It's used in the fight with Sagat at the beginning, and then it's used at the very end to fight Bison. And I got mentioned, like, I like that the energy attacks, the key attacks in this movie, can show that if they hit, they can really mess you up. But they're shown in this to be like the last resort, like the finishing blow kind of stuff. Where again, in the game, you're just kind of spamming them. But I like in here when Ryu and then Ken at the end, when they use the Hadouken, it's like they're pulling their ki together and it's like electricity going around them. So like they're also getting the energy from like around them as well. It's just really cool. It's a really cool way to show the Hadouken in any kind of video form. I mean, it's really, really cool. So I really like that. I just, I don't know. I kind of stuck to it. I thought that was just really cool. I forgot that that's how they interpreted the Hadouken in the game, or in the movie rather. And I thought that was just really cool nowadays because, I like cool stuff like that. I also remember the soundtrack of this movie being really cool too. Mainly the Alice in Chains song, Them Bones, which is used when Ken is driving around before he gets taken by Bison. But then the fight between Chun-Li and Vega, they use the KMFDM song Ultra, which I forgot that they used in that scene, and it just works. It works really, really well. I thought that was really cool. So there's also the score. And the main score piece that I really like though is the score that kind of follows Ryu throughout the movie. It just feels perfect for his character and the world. Like it's a great little piece, and I never noticed it before, and I noticed it now. Again, I'm older now, so I just watching a lot of movies, you just notice small things, notice scores and stuff like that. And I noticed the score for this movie, and it was so good. So it's a very beautiful piece as well. Just very, very good. And I forgot to look up who did the score for this, and I apologize for that. I think as a fan of the series, the Street Fighter series, it's pretty good. It has its very great moments, very good moments. Their characters pushed to the side a little bit, like Cammy, like I mentioned. We also get a Zangief and Blanca, and even Dhalsim, which I get it, the overstuffing a movie, even an animated movie, will feel off, and the story they're trying to tell, those characters don't really need to be in here that much. But there's also an Akuma cameo, and the Akuma cameo actually is in the uncut version. It wasn't in the original home release. That was another thing that I found out, when I found out about Naked Chun-Li, was Akuma. And Akuma is kind of like Ryu and Ken, kind of has the same kind of fighting style, but he's, he's a bad guy. He's an overall bad guy in the movie. And he has this purple magenta hair going up, and he is a very tough character, and he is, one of the big bad villains of the series as well. And they just treat him as a cameo here for no reason. And him and Ryu and Ken have a history because they, if I remember correctly, Ryu and Ken's master is Akuma's brother, or something like that. They're related in some way, shape, or form. So he has history with them. But in the movie, it's like he's just there. No acknowledgement to Ryu. They don't share any scene together. They're just there in the background. So, little stuff like that. There have been other Street Fighter animated movies, nothing related to this one. They're kind of like their own thing, their own, kind of offshoots. I think some of them are connected in some way, shape, or form, but nothing connected to this one. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this at the beginning. This was the basis of a series of games in the Street Fighter franchise. There was also an animated show that ran for 2 seasons. I don't think it's related to this one. I think it's just its own kind of thing. But I remember the anime show a lot as well. But watching this one again, it just made me realize, like, why isn't there more modern day animated Street Fighter movies? Like, there's some prime real estate right there to add more Street Fighter animated stuff. They're still making the games. The games are still popular, but I would love to see some more modern day Street Fighter stuff. Like, for a little bit, the guys who did Talk to Me, they were attached to direct the new live action Street Fighter movie, which they're still doing, but they're not doing it with him anymore. I think they got a new director, and I forgot to look up who it was. But even the director they got, I was like, that's a decent replacement. But the Talk to Me guys, the directors, they very briefly did a little thing with Street Fighter on their YouTube page if you want to go try to find it, because they were YouTube guys for a while, obviously. And they did a little thing with Street Fighter. I remember that because I remember seeing it. Oddly enough, right before I started rewatching this movie, I saw their Street Fighter stuff, and I'm like, oh no, they know what they're doing. Like they can handle the action stuff. So I was a little disappointed when they dropped out because they were going to do something else. But it is what it is. But besides the some of the YouTube stuff, there was a YouTube series which was actually really good. I'm very very happy with that stuff. If you can still find it online somewhere, I recommend looking at that. It's live action, but it's very very good. There has been obviously the 2 movies. There's been the Jean-Claude Van Damme version. There was an awful, just straight up awful, another Street Fighter movie called Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, which I will never watch again. You cannot pay me enough money to watch that movie again. I will not tell you to go watch that movie. If you watch that movie, you're doing it on your own accord because that movie is god awful. Just awful. That's literally one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And if you know me, I watch a lot of movies. And for me to say that is I don't say that lightly. But anyway, I just wish there's more Street Fighter stuff. We got the video games, that's great. But like animated movies, start making animated movies again. Like Mortal Kombat makes animated movies, right? Like I don't see why you can't make Street Fighter animated movies. I'm not saying they have to be on this level of Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, but just make them. I think that'd be great. I think there's a lot of real estate there that is being missed out for Street Fighter. All right. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for listening to this rewatch of Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. If you have seen it, let me know what you think in the comments or on the socials. I'd love to hear your opinion. If you've never watched it and you want to go watch it, I highly recommend you do go watch it. Even if you never watched it before and you just heard me talk about it, it's obviously much better as it plays out on screen than me talking about it. But yeah, go watch it, please. It is a very good movie. It's a very good animated movie. Again, the animation is really great. And I think you'll like it. I think you will. I think you will. I think you'll like it. Even if you don't know anything about Street Fighter, I think you'll like it. You'll have a good time with it. At the very least, you'll have a good time with it. So thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to check out all the socials down below. Go give us a follow, go give us a like, go subscribe, all that good stuff that helps out the podcast. I very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys next time right here on the Movie Pit Podcast.